Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in Sophomore English. We turn in our hymnals in Unit number 2, where we are studying short stories, to one of the most famous short stories, Ray Bradbury's There Will Come Soft Rains. I have some sophomores who will list at the end of the year, this is their favorite title. We'll see what your thoughts are about that one by the time we're finished. Before we get to the story on page 283, though, I want to jump back to page 269 for just a second. Make sure you have this in your notes at 2B. We are concentrating in our rhetorical literary analysis stuff on setting, the time, the place of a story's events. Also, the descriptions that are used in creating word pictures. Sometimes setting affects story's plot. A well-described setting, I'm just reading these bullet points on 269. A well-described setting helps readers understand time, place of the action in a story. This will be hypercritical for what's happening in the story, There Will Come Soft Rains. Also, down at the bottom of 269, do you see that making inferences? We're going to be very interested in doing that as well. In other words, let's put this in our notes at level 1. All the way through this story, we're going to ask a simple question. Dude, what's going on? I'm serious about this. You're going to go, what exactly is going on? One of the things I love about this story, and I would say this in my notes at 2B, and it's one of the reasons why students throughout time since the story was published have loved this story, is that this is one of those classic examples of a story which says it without saying it. I would write that down. It says it without saying it. Now, what is the it that we are speaking about? Well, we'll get to it when we are finished with the story. It's going to have a whole lot to do, though, with setting. Okay? Let's talk really quickly on page 282. Remember our vocabulary words that we want to make sure that we know. Let's meet Ray Bradbury on the effacing page 283. Note the dates here, born in 1920. One of the world's most celebrated science fiction and fantasy writers. Born in Illinois, grew up near Lake Michigan. As a child, he was influenced by the stories of Edgar Allan Poe, developed a fascination with horror movies and futuristic fantasy. He considers most of his work fantasy rather than science fiction, explaining, quote, "Science fiction is the art of the possible, fantasy is the art of the impossible." One of his dreams remains an impossible fantasy, at least for now. He wants to go to Mars. But, quote, "but since it's not going to happen," he explains, "I don't worry about it," end quote. Bradbury was commemorated in 2002 with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The background for this story is hypercritical, so let's get it in our notes. The atomic age. Ray Bradbury published this story in 1950. Write that down, that's huge. 1950, 5 years earlier, the United States had dropped the first atomic bombs on Japan at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 1 year before the story was published, the Soviet Union had tested its own atomic device. The story reflects the fear at that time that these rival nations might unleash their deadly technology and destroy humanity. Now, let's put this in our notes at 2B. We're going to see a number of these titles in our high school studies. They are what we call apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic texts. You're probably familiar with a text like The Giver, which you read this novel and you're all the way through the novel and then all of a sudden it hits you, oh wait, this novel is actually set way in the future and there's something that happened that jacked the world really badly. I wonder what that was. Usually it's some kind of catastrophe. Environment has been destroyed, but usually it's because of some act of violence. That is to say, some kind of weapons have been exploded or whatever. We're going to see the same kind of game here. Now, as we go through this story, we're going to pay attention to the setting, but we're going to write this question down as well. What's up with the title? What is up with the title? So we're not going to understand, There Will Come Soft Rains, we're not going to understand this title until the very end. Again, some sophomores have said this may be the most scary story they've ever actually read, once they understand what Ray Bradbury is saying. Let's go to work. I'm with you on 284. Follow along with our professional reader. Again, the challenge is to try and stay focused all the way through the reading of the story. Here we go.
There Will Come Soft Rains by Ray Bradbury. In the living room, the voice clock sang, "Tick-tock, 7 o'clock, time to get up, 7 o'clock," as if it were afraid that nobody would. The morning house lay empty. The clock ticked on, repeating and repeating its sounds into the emptiness. 7-9, breakfast time, 7-9. In the kitchen, the breakfast stove gave a hissing sigh and ejected from its warm interior 8 pieces of perfectly browned toast, 8 eggs sunny side up, 16 slices of bacon, 2 coffees, and 2 cool glasses of milk. Today is August 4th, 2026, said a second voice from the kitchen ceiling, in the city of Allendale, California. It repeated the date 3 times for memory's sake. Today is Mr. Featherstone's birthday. Today is the anniversary of Talita's marriage. Insurance is payable, as are the water, gas, and light bills. Somewhere in the walls, relays clicked. Memory tapes glided under electric eyes. 8-1, tick-tock. 8-1 o'clock, off to school, off to work, run, run, 8-1. But no doors slammed. No carpets took the soft tread of rubber heels. It was raining outside.
286.
The weather box on the front door sang quietly, "Rain, rain, go away, rubbers, raincoats for today." And the rain tapped on the empty house, echoing. Outside, the garage chimed and lifted its door to reveal the waiting car. After a long wait, the door swung down again.
All right, let's pause for a moment. Say 2 things really quickly for your notes. This is a very interesting story. What is going on? 2 answers. 1, notice that right away we have technology. So write that down. We have a house that is fully automated. Yes? So in other words, of its own accord, this house will speak through some kind of speaker system the time. It will create breakfast. It will produce breakfast right there so that there's nobody who has to make any kind of breakfast, right? Notice it tells us the date. Today is August 4th, 2026. We are, of course, giving this lecture in the year 2019, which means we're 7 years away from the date in this story. When this story was published, it was 1950, however. So putting it in 2026 put it way out in the future. So let's write this down. This is clearly what we call a futuristic story. In other words, Ray Bradbury was asking a question in 1950. What will it look like in 2026? And here was his answer. In 2026, technology is so amazing that you don't even have to make your own breakfast. You get up in the morning to a house that wakes you up. You have breakfast waiting for you when you walk into the kitchen. The breakfast that you've always wanted. All you got to do is just walk into the kitchen, and there it is. But there's one little piece of evidence that's significant. At the bottom of 284, notice it. No doors slammed. No carpets took the soft tread of rubber heels. What? And then the next line. It was raining outside, which is interesting because the title is called There Will Come Soft Rains. All of a sudden we're going to realize that while the house is animated, moving, that is to say, acting, there aren't any humans. Where are the humans in 2026? Let's write that question down. Where are the humans in 2026? Now, I've had students that start out listening to the story and now all of a sudden are very interested to start reading the story. That is to say, Bradbury has introduced a level of curiosity for them. Dude, what exactly is going on in this story? We're with you on 286. Follow along closely. Let's find out what's going on in this story.
At 8:30, the eggs were shriveled and the toast was like stone. An aluminum wedge scraped them into the sink, where hot water whirled them down a metal throat, which digested and flushed them away to the distant sea. The dirty dishes were dropped into a hot washer and emerged twinkling dry. 9:15, sang the clock, time to clean. Out of warrens in the wall, tiny robot mice darted. The rooms were a crawl with the small cleaning animals, all rubber and metal. They thudded against chairs, whirling their mustached runners, kneading the rug nap, sucking gently at hidden dust. Then, like mysterious invaders, they popped into their burrows. Their pink electric eyes faded. The house was clean. 10 o'clock. The sun came out from behind the rain. The house stood alone in a city of rubble and ashes. This was the one house left standing. At night, the ruined city gave off a radioactive glow which could be seen for miles. 10:15. The garden sprinklers whirled up in golden founts, filling the soft morning air with scatterings of brightness. The water pelted window panes, running down the charred west side where the house had been burned evenly free of its white paint.
287.
The entire west face of the house was black, save for 5 places. Here, the silhouette in paint of a man mowing a lawn. Here, as in a photograph, a woman bent to pick flowers. Still farther over, their images burned on wood in one titanic instant, a small boy, hands flung into the air. Higher up, the image of a thrown ball, and opposite him, a girl, hands raised to catch a ball, which never came down. The 5 spots of paint, the man, the woman, the children, the ball, remained. The rest was a thin charcoal layer.
And it's right about now that most readers of this story go, whoa, whoa, whoa. What's going on? Well, in 2026, what's going on is we have a fully automated house. Dude, it can wake you up and it can make you breakfast, but there's nobody there to eat the breakfast. But go back to page 286. Notice the second to the last paragraph, the last full paragraph at 10 o'clock. The sun came out from behind the rain. Notice how the word rain keeps being used over and over in the story. The house stood alone in a city of rubble and ashes. This was the one house left standing. At night, the ruined city gave off a radioactive glow, which could be seen for miles. And all of a sudden you go, radioactive? What is radioactive? Well, over related to, of course, atomic weapons, yes? Then we'll read on page 287 that while there are no humans in this house, on the outside of the house, against one of the walls, you can see silhouetted a certain shadow of 5 human bodies that no longer exist. Notice the 5 bodies, 5 places. A woman bent to pick flowers. Further over, a small boy, hands flung into the air, the image of a thrown ball. Opposite him, a girl, hands raised to catch a ball, which never came down. What happened in this moment? I told you, that's what's brilliant about this story. Instead of Bradbury saying, let me tell you about what happened when the atomic weapons went off and destroyed the world. Instead of telling you that, he simply says, all there is on the side of this house is a silhouette of a couple of children playing ball. But they're not there anymore. That is to say, at the moment as the ball was in its arc between the brother and sister, there was an explosion which obliterated everything. Ironically, the house did not fall, but of course the humans were immediately incinerated. And then the final line, 5 spots of paint. The man, the woman, the children, the ball, remained. Of course, that's ironic, right? Because they actually don't remain. They're just there in drawings, right? The rest, a thin charcoaled layer, which already makes a lot of students go, whoa, whoa, whoa. What is this story about, and how many more pages do I have of the story? What is going to happen in a story like this? That will lead us to now maybe want to even more pay attention to what's happening as we go forward.
The gentle sprinkler rain filled the garden with
more rain, right?
Until this day, how well the house had kept its peace. How carefully it had inquired, who goes there? What's the password? And getting no answer from lonely foxes and whining cats, it had shut up its windows and drawn shades in an old maidenly preoccupation with self-protection, which bordered on a mechanical paranoia. It quivered at each sound, the house did. If a sparrow brushed a window, the shades snapped up. The bird, startled, flew off. No, not even a bird must touch the house. The house was an altar with 10,000 attendants, big, small, servicing, attending, in choirs. But the gods had gone away, and the ritual of the religion continued senselessly, uselessly. 12 noon. A dog whined, shivering on the front porch. The front door recognized the dog voice and opened. The dog, once huge and fleshy, but now gone to bone and covered with sores, moved in and through the house, tracking mud. Behind it whirred angry mice, angry at having to pick up mud, angry at inconvenience. For not a leaf fragment blew under the door, but what the wall panels flipped open, and the copper scrap rats flashed swiftly out. The offending dust, hair, or paper, seized in miniature steel jaws, was raced back to the burrows. There, down tubes which fed into the cellar, it was dropped into the sighing vent of an incinerator which sat like evil Baal in a dark corner. The dog ran upstairs, hysterically yelping to each door, at last realizing, as the house realized, that only silence was here. It sniffed the air and scratched the kitchen door. Behind the door, the stove was making pancakes which filled the house with a rich baked odor and the scent of maple syrup. The dog frothed at the mouth, lying at the door, sniffing, its eyes turned to fire. It ran wildly in circles, biting at its tail, spun in a frenzy, and died. It lay in the parlor for an hour. 2 o'clock, sang a voice. Delicately sensing decay at last, the regiments of mice hummed out as softly as blown gray leaves in an electrical wind. 2:15. The dog was gone. In the cellar, the incinerator glowed suddenly, and a whirl of sparks leaped up the chimney. 2:35. Bridge tables sprouted from patio walls. Playing cards fluttered onto pads in a shower of pips. Glasses manifested on an oaken bench with egg salad sandwiches. Music played. But the tables were silent, and the cards untouched. At 4 o'clock, the tables folded like great butterflies back through the paneled walls. 4:30. The nursery walls glowed. Animals took shape. Yellow giraffes, blue lions, pink antelopes, lilac panthers cavorting in crystal substance. The walls were glass. They looked out upon color and fantasy. Hidden films clocked through well-oiled sprockets, and the walls lived. The nursery floor was woven to resemble a crisp cereal meadow. Over this ran aluminum roaches and iron crickets, and in the hot, still air, butterflies of delicate red tissue wavered among the sharp aroma of animal spores. There was the sound like a great matted yellow hive of bees within a dark bellows, the lazy bumble of a purring lion. And there was the patter of okapi feet and the murmur of a fresh jungle rain, like other hoofs falling upon the summer-starched grass. Now the walls dissolved into distances of parched weed, mile on mile, and warm, endless sky. The animals drew away into thorn breaks and water holes. It was the children's hour.
Some have argued that line, "It was the children's hour," is the most disturbing of all of the lines of this very disturbing story. By the way, put it in your notes at 3A really quickly. You'll remember when we were freshmen that we did Arthur C. Clarke's "If I Forget Thee, O Earth," about a father and his son who take a drive out on the surface of the moon to go and have a special look back at a place called Earth, where nobody lives anymore, and now the only humans that are surviving at all in the world or in the universe are actually on the moon. And when they look back at the Earth, they can see that radioactive cloud dust because humans committed mutually assured destruction, M-A-D, mad, and had blown up the world and couldn't live anymore on the world. And it's the child who has to come to realization that he'll never actually get to ever be on the Earth. But maybe his great-great-great-grandson will. Go back and take a look in our freshman folder at LearnStrong.net if you don't remember this story. It's a brilliant, brilliant story. We're playing the same game here. In other words, inside the house we have a child's room where all the cute little animals are on the wall. Notice, by the way, the only thing in this story that's moving are animals. Did you notice this? Where are all the humans? Gone. Why are all the humans gone? Because other humans decided that they needed to use violence to resolve conflict in horrific ways. In other words, Bradbury is making a comment about his fears regarding the use of atomic weapons. Yes? That is to say, he says something without saying it. By the way, one last comment. Do you notice how, tick-tock, tick-tock, this story goes from the morning at 7 o'clock? Notice how we keep going through the clock? Notice how it's italicized? Which obviously begs the question, what happens at the end of the day? Yes? What happens at the end of the day? How's this story going to end? Let's go ahead now and follow to the end of the story. Again, very disturbing story, no doubt.
5 o'clock. The bath filled with clear hot water. 6, 7, 8 o'clock. The dinner dishes manipulated like magic tricks, and in the study, a click. In the hearth, a fire now blazed up warmly. 9 o'clock. The beds warmed their hidden circuits, for nights were cool here. 9:05, a voice spoke from the study ceiling. Mrs. McClellan, which poem would you like this evening?
289.
The house was silent. The voice said at last, Since you express no preference, I shall select a poem at random. Quiet music rose to back the voice. Sarah Teasdale, as I recall, your favorite. There will come soft rains, and the smell of the ground and swallows circling with their shimmering sound, and frogs in the pools singing at night, and wild plum trees in tremulous white. Robins will wear their feathery fire, whistling their whims on a low fence wire. And not one will know of the war, not one will care at last when it is done. Not one would mind, neither bird nor tree, if mankind perished utterly.
290.
And spring herself, when she woke at dawn, would scarcely know that we were gone. The fire burned on the stone hearth. The empty chairs faced each other between the silent walls, and the music played.
All right, here we go, the heart of the story. At the end of the day, the house asks, did you catch it? The mother of the house. Did you catch it? Her name at the top of 289.